Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical issues Arsenal encountered in their 1-0 loss at Everton. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Everton's defensive shape, then we'll shift to Arsenal's issue out in the wider areas, and lastly we'll focus on how Everton's set pieces caused Arsenal several issues. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have both sides playing in a 4-3-3, but with Arsenal dominating majority of the possession, Everton were dropping off into a deep 4-5-1. You had the wide players tucking into narrow positions, and then in that midfield zone for Everton, it would be down to how they wanted to deal with that midfield trio. Essentially, you would have Doucouré and Onana tracking the movement of Xhaka and Odegaard, but with Thomas Partey likely to get on the ball, would they want Gay to push forward to step towards him, or have Calvert-Lewin dropping off a bit deeper so Idrissa Gay could deal with movement in those central areas, specifically nketiah dropping off deeper in towards that zone? Ultimately, the manner in which Everton were going to look to close down Arsenal in that midfield zone depended on Arsenal's shape, because in terms of their attack, they either attacked in a 4-1-5 with Odegaard and Xhaka pushing beyond the shuttlers and looking to get in towards the final third, or there were times where Zinchenko simply tucked in towards that central area, made it a 3-2-5, and Gabriel shifted across in towards that left-sided zone to ensure that he was capable of occupying it if Arsenal did lose possession. In many of these scenarios, specifically in that opening half, you had Zinchenko shifting in towards that midfield zone to make it the 3-2-5. And from there, you'd end up seeing Doucouré stepping towards Zinchenko. You'd have Gay pushing towards Thomas Partey. And then you'd have one of the wider players, if it was McNeil on that right-hand side, he'll deal with Xhaka, who was dropping off a bit deeper. However, the roles of the Everton players were all situational. For instance, they didn't want Zinchenko to get on the ball freely, so whenever he did look to push forward towards the half line, Doucouré would step forward to close him down. And you'd have Iwobi dropped off in a narrow position. If Xhaka pushed higher up the pitch, they'd simply have Cody shift across to track that movement. But there were situations where you'd have Iwobi dropping off deeper to deal with Xhaka if he was in a deeper left-sided position. It also would help if they had nketiah occupying the two center backs, because then if Doucouré was pushing high on Zinchenko and Xhaka was free, they could simply have Gay shift laterally to close him down in that zone. Another way to look at it is that if Zinchenko picked up the ball in his own half, you could see Doucouré beginning to step forward to close him down, and you would have McNeil near Xhaka. But if the ball got played out towards Martinelli, McNeil would shift across to Martinelli to help out Coleman to make it a 1v2, and then Gay could shift across towards Xhaka to track that movement if Cody doesn't step forward. In that scenario, if you have Gay shifting towards Xhaka, then Onana would push forward to deal with Thomas Partey, and that's where you would need Iwobi to tuck in narrow to deal with Odegaard if it was positioned in that midfield zone. The other alternative for Everton would be to have Cody stepping towards Xhaka if he was dropping off a bit deeper, because Tarkowski could deal with nketiah. You'd have Gay covering the center of the pitch, and then Onana would also be closing that gap in that midfield zone depending on Odegaard's positioning, because if he's pushed higher up the pitch, then you could have one of the defenders or Iwobi dropping off deeper to ensure that he can't pick up the ball in that inside right position. In many ways, what you end up seeing was that Everton were focused on ensuring that Thomas Partey and Zinchenko couldn't get on the ball freely and play balls between the lines for Xhaka and Odegaard, and they also had the wide players tucking into narrow positions to ensure that Xhaka and Odegaard couldn't receive the ball in those pockets of space to ensure that they couldn't help progress Arsenal's attack. So that's why they had Doucouré pushing forward to close down Zinchenko when he received the ball in the midfield zone. They had Onana pushing towards Thomas Partey if Calvert-Lewin wasn't dropping off a bit deeper. Gay was covering for Doucouré to pick up Xhaka if he moved into that midfield zone. And they had Iwobi or McNeil, whoever was on that left-hand side, dropping off a bit deeper to deal with Odegaard, who wanted to receive the ball in inside pockets of space on the right side of the pitch. Therefore, when we shift to the wider areas, it was simply down to disciplined work from McNeil and Iwobi to ensure that Martinelli and Saka could never get into 1v1s with Coleman or Mykolenko. To be fair, whenever they did get into those 1v1s, Coleman and Mykolenko did a very good job of forcing them towards the byline and ensuring that they couldn't get crosses into the box or cut on towards their stronger foot to get shots on goal. But the common theme throughout that game was that Iwobi and McNeil were ensuring that it was 1v2 against the wide players, and even if you had runs from Odegaard or Xhaka in towards the half spaces to receive the ball behind the fullbacks, those runs were tracked by Onana, Gay, or at times you'd have the center back shifting across to ensure that Odegaard and Xhaka couldn't receive the ball freely in that zone. On the rare occasion where there were overlapping runs, the wide players did a very good job of tracking that movement, but the biggest issue that Arsenal encountered in those wider areas was that their attacks were stagnant and it was often an isolation in the 1v2 situation. If Xhaka was pushing higher up the pitch, Cody would track him or Gay would track him, and they simply would swap positions between Zinchenko and Xhaka, with Zinchenko pushing in towards that gap, and it simply allowed Iwobi to drop off deeper to pick up Martinelli, and they could still have Doucouré shifting across while you had Gay, Coleman, and Cody within close proximity of Zinchenko or Xhaka, unless Nketiah was occupying the center back, and then still it would be 1v2 in that zone. And then over on the right-hand side, Arsenal encountered a similar issue. It was often 1v2 with Saka against Mykolenko and McNeil, and then if Odegaard looked to make a forward run, simply Onana could track that movement, and there were simply times where you had Odegaard in a central position and Tarkowski would pick him up, and then Onana and Gay would be the spare men, with White holding a deeper position in that inside right zone, and not offering a legitimate goal threat or a creative threat from that position by delivering crosses in towards the penalty area. So put simply, out on these wider areas, Arsenal were simply getting outnumbered because they were willing to have Iwobi and McNeil drop off deeper to pick up the wide player in the 3-2-5 or the 4-1-5. It allowed the fullbacks to push forward and provide protection, so it made it a 1v2. If they had the shuttlers making forward runs, they could simply have their shuttlers in Doucouré and Onana track that run. And even if they had Doucouré or Onana looking to push forward to the fullbacks that were sitting a bit deeper, Cody or Tarkowski could shift across to provide cover as well. So that ultimately left Saka and Martinelli in situations where they struggled to beat Everton in wide areas in 1v2s, and whenever they looked to run at the wide attacking player and the fullback, they often lost possession, or at the very best they settled for corner kicks. And then from an attacking perspective, while Everton did enjoy some moments where they would play long balls in towards Calvert-Lewin and then try to get him to link play with the inverted wide players coming in central and McNeil and Iwobi, they often found success from set pieces where they were looking to play corner kicks towards the far post. And the common theme that we witnessed here was that their runners towards those zones were getting the better of Bukayo Saka, Odegaard, or sometimes both, brushing them off as they would run towards the 6-yard area to get the running start on the set defender that was often Saliba, and from there they were looking to test Ramsdale from point blank range. Regardless of the runner making that movement in towards that area, he was able to get that 1v1 due to the help of Onana often occupying another marker or blocking him off, and there was even a situation where you had Onana making a run towards the far post, and from there he almost got himself into a position where he should have put Everton ahead. But it was a clear tactical ploy from Sean Dyche to exploit Arsenal's set-piece defending, and even when you look to the build-up to the winner, it's Tarkowski getting a run off Saka, who doesn't track that run, and then he gets himself into a 1v1 with Odegaard. You could see that it's Onana who's making the block off, and when that delivery gets played towards that far post, it's Tarkowski bullying Odegaard towards the ball, and he's able to nod it beyond Ramsdale from point blank range. From Iwobi's corner, you witness Onana and Tarkowski loading up on Xhaka and Odegaard, and when that ball is played in, that's where you see Onana blocking off Xhaka, and you see Tarkowski winning the battle against Odegaard. As it gets to the far post, Tarkowski climbs over Odegaard, but he ends up nodding his effort off Saliba from point blank range. And then if we look to another example, from a McNeil corner, you could see that Onana and Mope are occupying Xhaka and Odegaard, and Tarkowski has a free run towards the 6-yard area. Mope takes Odegaard out of the game, and Xhaka gets caught under the ball, and that's where you see Onana challenging it freely, and the ball bounces in the 6-yard area, but from this position, he can't poke it beyond Ramsdale. So as you can see, Everton's defensive shape, specifically their discipline in wide areas, limited Arsenal's impact in those zones, whereas they successfully exploited a weak area in the away side set-piece defending with corners towards the far post.